Heard rumors about them, but that's all. You reminded me of the scariest thing that's happened to me so far. I guess maybe I've tried so long to forget about it that it just didn't come to mind right away. As someone who spends literally all of their time in the woods, you don't ever want to let yourself get scared of being alone, or out in the middle of nowhere. That's why when you have experiences like this, you tend to just forget about them and move on. This is, to date, the only thing that's ever made me really seriously consider if this job is the right one for me. I don't really like talking about it much, but I'll do the best I can to remember it all. As I recall, this took place right at the end of spring. It was a typical lost child call. A 4-year-old girl had wandered away from her family's campsite, and had been missing for about 2 hours. Her parents were completely despondent, and told us what most parents do: "My kid would never wander away, she's so good about staying close, she's never done anything like this before." We assure the parents that we'll do everything we can to find her, and we spread out in a standard search formation. I was partnered with one of my good buddies, and we were sort of casually holding conversation while we hiked. I know it sounds callous, but you do sort of become desensitized when you've done this long enough. It becomes the norm, and I think to a certain extent you have to learn to desensitize yourself in order to work this job. We search for a good 2 hours, going well beyond where we think she'd be, and we come out of a small valley when something makes us both stop in unison. We freeze and look at each other, and there's almost a sensation like a plane depressurizing. My ears pop, and I have this odd sensation of having dropped about 10 feet. I start to ask my buddy if he felt that, but before I can, we hear the loudest sound I've ever heard in my life. It's almost like a freight train passing directly by us, but it's coming from every direction at once, including above and below us. He screams something to me, but I can't hear him over this deafening roar. Understandably freaked out, we look all around us, trying to find the source of the sound, but neither of us sees anything. Of course, my first thought is a landslide, but we're not near any cliffs, and even if we were, it would have hit us by now. The sound goes on, and we're trying to yell to each other, but even standing close together we can't hear anything but this sound. Then, as suddenly as it starts, it stops, like someone threw a switch and cut it off. We stand there for a second, perfectly still, and slowly the normal sounds of the woods come back. He asks me what the fuck just happened, but I just kind of shrug, and we stand there looking at each other for a minute. We're about halfway back when my buddy stops and shines his light to the right of us, into a really thick deadfall, or group of dead trees. I ask him if he's heard a response, but he just tells me to be quiet a second and listen. I do, and in the distance, I can hear what sounds like a kid crying. We both call the girl's name and listen for any kind of response, but it's just this really faint crying. We head in the direction of this deadfall and go around it, calling her name over and over. As we get closer to the crying, I start getting this weird feeling in my gut, and I tell my buddy that something isn't right. He tells me he feels the same way, but we can't figure out what it is. We stop where we are, and call the girl's name again, and at the same time, we both figure it out: the crying is on a loop. It's the same little hitching sob, then wail, then quiet hiccup, repeated over and over. It's exactly the same every time, and without saying another word, we both take off running. It's the only time I've ever lost my composure like that, but something about it was so incredibly wrong, and neither of us wanted to stay out there anymore. When we got back to the rendezvous, we asked if anyone else had heard anything strange, but no one else knew what we were talking about. I know it sounds sort of anticlimactic, but that call fucked me up for a long time. As for the little girl, we never found a trace of her. We keep an eye out for her, and all the other people who we've never found, but frankly I doubt we'll ever find anything. Be me, 16 years old, circa 2010. Getting home from a friend's house. Enter bathroom, piss, enter bedroom. Throw my backpack on top of my bed like a common messy teenager. The moment the backpack hits the bed, a horrible sound comes from under the bed. Sounded like you would imagine a werewolf would growl. Horrible sound, but not very long, maybe 3 seconds. Have a dog, think that the fag got under my bed or something, but that noise was way too fucking horrible for my dog to make it. Even though I don't believe in this shit, I don't risk it. Call my uncle, whom was in the kitchen. I heard a horrible sound under the bed, called the dog's name but it didn't come out. Watch me as I look under. Feel very uneasy, Can feel I'm going to see some an abomination and it's going to rip my face off. Nothing but my dumbbells under the bed, feel relieved. To this day I can't explain that. I heard it clear as water, I wasn't high or drunk, later saw that my dog was outside chilling with other dogs nearby. Also, kind of related. Year back when I was like 8 years old. Fresh summer day, chilling in my living room with the door to the yard open. Suddenly random dog appears, didn't have a dog till years later. Literally enters living room, doesn't even look at me and goes straight to my bedroom. Gets under my bed. Don't know what the fuck is happening. Grandma comes because I was making noise by telling the dog to get out. Explain to her what happened. We conclude that the dog was looking for a place to die. I don't believe that, the dog looked healthy and young, when we got it out he acted like a normal dog being kicked out of a place. When he entered I'll never forget how he looked like he knew exactly where he was going, weird shit. Be me. About a year ago. Need to do some general maintenance for my car. Oil change, tire rotation, etc. Too busy and don't feel like doing it myself, so going to take car to shop. Brother who is the family car guy is adamant that I take it to a dealership almost 40 minutes up the bypass. Fine whatever. JPEG. Get to the dealership, have car serviced and get back on bypass to go home. About 6 or 7 miles from dealership, in cluster of cars. Get a weird feeling, feel unsafe. Decide to speed up and get away from this cluster of cars. Not even a minute later I see something out of the corner of my eye in my rear view. White SUV that I passed is swerving across the lanes. Smoke coming from the back, obviously had a blowout. Other cars behind me start swerving to avoid the SUV, no idea if it hit any of them. Last I see of SUV, it stopped in the median. No idea why I got that feeling something was going to happen. Now make it a point to avoid large clusters of cars when driving on the interstates. Fuck, I've been thinking of this and it reminded me of something eerily similar back when I was a kid. Be me. In 5th grade, so either 10 or 11. Wake up for school. Start typical morning routine of getting ready. While brushing my teeth, get a huge fucking feeling of dread. Wasn't a I don't want to go to school feeling, it was a don't go to school feeling. Concerned, but brush it off. Finish getting ready, eat breakfast, and get in mom's car to go OT school. Dreadful feeling still in the back of my head, but I don't think much of it, probably just general anxiety. As my mom is driving down the road our neighborhood is off of, we come up to an incline with a slight curve to it. Dump truck carrying rocks from a nearby construction site. Coincidentally, the construction site was for an expansion of the bypass my first story takes place on to take it through my town. Me and my mom aren't near the curve, but the dump truck is. I didn't notice this, but my mom said the dump truck was speeding. Right as we're nearing the curve, the dump truck flips on its side after almost doing a 180. Skids across the road towards us. Mom slams the brakes. The smaller rocks the dump truck was hauling come flying towards us, denting the hood of her car and cracking the windshield. Miraculously both me and my mom were perfectly fine. If we had been even just a few meters closer, the larger rocks the dump truck was hauling would have definitely hit us. Police come, some people living in another neighborhood off that road also come out to see if we need help. They get the dump truck driver out of his truck. Dump truck driver was bred up a bit but also okay. Turns out he was like 15 or so and didn't even have a license. Dad comes home from work to pick us up. Cry like a bitch when we finally get home and play video the rest of the day. Again, have no idea where this feeling came from. There was a hunter in the woods. Who, after a long day hunting, was in the middle of an immense forest. It was getting dark, and having lost his bearings, he decided to head in one direction until he was clear of the increasingly oppressive foliage. After what seemed like hours, he came across a cabin in a small clearing. Realizing how dark it had grown, he decided to see if he could stay there for the night. He approached, and found the door ajar. Nobody was inside. The hunter flopped down on the single bed, deciding to explain himself to the owner in the morning. As he looked around, he was surprised to see the walls adorned by many portraits, all painted in incredible detail. Without exception, they appeared to be staring down at him, their features twisted into looks of hatred. Staring back, he grew increasingly uncomfortable. Making a concerted effort to ignore the many hateful faces, he turned to face the wall, and exhausted, he fell into a restless sleep. Face down in an unfamiliar bed, he turned blinking in unexpected sunlight. Looking up, he discovered that the cabin had no portraits. Only windows.